Hi, I'm Laura Nadine, and this is episode 2. So the first thing we're going to talk about is tuning. To help you understand a little bit about the tuning, I'm going to use this. This is actually the neck of a cello. Accidentally broke off the one back there. But it's going to be great for us to see how the pegs work. The violin pegs are made the same way, just much smaller. What you really need to understand about pegs on these strings and instruments is this, that one side of it is larger than the other. Okay, why is that important? Well, as you're tuning, if you're not pushing the peg into the peg box so that it wedges itself in there, then the peg is just going to continue to spin as the string pulls it down. So what you're going to need to do as you're tuning your instrument is you're going to need to push in toward the peg box with some pressure so that it wedges in there and holds the tuning. You can see in my violin peg box, even though the pegs have a different color and slightly different size, it is the same concept. The peg is larger on the side closest to where you grip it and smaller as it comes into the peg box. My strings are also wound in a very particular way. They're wound over the peg, not under it. And I keep my strings really close to the side of the peg box. That also helps hold in the string. Now, this is a lot for a beginner, so we're hoping that you don't have to do a whole lot of tuning with your pegs. If your violin's brand new, you might have to use the pegs to initially get it in tune, but hopefully you have a bunch of these little guys, one on each of these strings, called your small tuners. Now, this violin doesn't have it, but we have another violin I'm going to show you in just a moment that does have all of the small tuners. Not only are you going to be pushing that peg in as you're turning it, we're going to turn in really small increments. It's super important that you do not just crank the peg away from you, as that is what ends up breaking your string. So what we need to be able to do is tune, turning in very tiny small movements while pushing in, and at the same time listening to the pitch of the string. Okay, so how am I doing this? I have my hand on the side of the neck, my right hand, and I'm using my thumb to check the tuning of the string. And then my left hand is pushing on the peg into the peg box and slowly turning it away from me to make the pitch go up. Okay? When you're doing the pegs on the right side of the violin, it'll be the same concept. Use your left hand to brace the violin and check the tuning with your thumb while turning with your right hand. So what do you do if you have a stuck peg? Well, you need to be able to turn it, right? But don't turn it away from you. If you turn it away from you when it's stuck and it suddenly slips, again, you can break your string. If you can't get it to turn, try to break it loose by turning it toward you. You hear that little click? The little click was the peg was wedged in there for so long, actually stuck a little bit. But now I haven't broken my string. I've gotten the peg a little looser, and I can slowly bring it up until it's in tune, or get it really close and take it the rest of the way with the small tuner. So let's take a look at that again, but this time I'm going to show you on a small violin. If you're a parent and you're helping a young child learn to play the violin, you might have a smaller violin like this one. This violin is a 1/10 size violin, but on any of the violins under a half size, the pegs are really tiny and you have to move them in even smaller increments. That's why they usually provide students with all of these small tuners. Some of you might have ones that are built into your tailpiece. That's some more modern ones. This is an older model small violin, and these had the small tuners put onto the string. These are great because it's incredibly difficult, if not near impossible, to break a string turning it with these small tuners because you can't go far enough to really break the string. So how do these work? When you turn them clockwise to the right, the pitch goes up. When you turn them left or counterclockwise, the pitch goes down. So now that we have some basic understanding what's going on with our pegs and our little tuners, we're going to have to check one more thing, especially if your violin is brand new. And that's this piece right here called the bridge. The bridge is not glued to the violin. So why is it important to know this? So there's a couple of reasons. One, if it falls over, it's not a huge deal. You can put the bridge back on. The bridge is shaped with the E string lower than the G string. With a brand new violin out of the box that's maybe shipped with loose strings, you're going to have to tighten them a lot and tune them a lot. And during that process, the bridge might start to lean toward the fingerboard. So here, I've just put it up on the violin, lining up the feet with these little notches right here on the violin. Watch what happens as I tighten the string. And you can now see that the bridge is leaning slightly toward the fingerboard. Now, some bridges actually are carved to have a slight lean, but what I'm really going to look for are these little tiny feet right here, which is harder to see on this tiny violin. They're sitting as flat as possible on the surface of the violin. See, there's no space under that at all. And my bridge looks pretty straight up and down. And it's also in alignment with the end of the fingerboard. See, it's going nice and straight. We don't want a bridge sitting crooked either way. So that the bridge doesn't fall over, yes, but also so that the sound resonates properly through the violin. This is what translates the sounds from the strings and pushes it into your peg box. Take a look at it, see how loose your strings are, make sure your bridge is standing upright, and then when you've got all that done, go ahead and unpause the video and I'm going to show you how to tune it using a tuner. You might have noticed that some of the editing has some quick cuts in it. Don't always do things right on the first take. In fact, in this example, I was trying to show everybody how to tune their violin and didn't realize that my microphone reduced its sensitivity by at least half while I had the tuner on the screen that I was screen recording to show you. So being able to show you the tuner in real time, not something I'm going to be able to pull off today in this episode. I'm always learning more, but let's go ahead, let's move on, and I will show you how to tune your violin. Whatever tuner that you're using, if you're using the Pro Guitar Tuner that I suggested as the app, or you've bought a physical tuner, there's going to be some sort of a screen that has a marker that moves from left to right to tell you whether or not your string is in tune, okay? It'll also show you the letter, and in some cases will even change color. One of the ones that clip to the violin will turn green when it's in tune, for example. What's important about that little gauge is that if it's too far to the right, then it means that your string is too high, and if it's too far to the left, it means that your string is too low. You want it straight up and down. You want it to turn that beautiful green color, if that's one of the things it can do, or say in the center A4 for your A string. And yes, we're going to start with your A string. So remember your A string, if this is your E, your A is your second string in, okay? Let's follow that string all the way up into your peg box, and you'll see that the peg on the top right side of the scroll is the peg for the A. All right, so let's check the tuning of this string. Definitely not an A. That is way lower than it needs to be. So that means I'm going to have to tighten my peg. Now remember, I told you tightening the peg is where you can break the string if you're not careful. So we're going to do what we showed before. We're going to wedge the violin against the hand, constantly pizzicato with the string, and slowly move the peg away from your face, pushing into the peg box to tighten and bring the pitch up. I got close, but a little high. So now we're going to move down to our small tuner. If I go clockwise to the right, that makes the pitch go up. If I go counterclockwise to the left, that makes the pitch go down. Right now, my string is too high. So I'm going to loosen the string by turning this counterclockwise, and slightly bigger movements than I was doing with the peg. I'm having a hard time getting this precisely right, but it could be also that the other strings are out of tune, and so the bridge isn't being pulled on properly and it's changing the resonance. Yeah, the other strings are really badly out of tune. So I'm going to get that close and leave that alone for a minute. If you are just pulling your violin out of the box, it's possible you're going to have to go through this multiple stages of tuning to get it tuned the first time. But if you keep your violin tuned every day and you practice it every day, it should, after a few days, hold its tuning fairly well, unless there's some big weather change where it suddenly gets colder or suddenly gets warmer. Okay? So this is not going to be the process every time. Unfortunately, for you beginners with brand new violins, it's going to be the process for the next couple of days. All right, so let's go ahead and tune the D string. I'm going to follow the third string over from the right all the way up into the peg box. The peg on the top left side is your D string peg, okay? So let's go ahead and watch the tuner and see if we can get this in tune. Pretty close, so I'm going to leave it there near my D and check the other strings. Again, brand new violin, right? First time tuning. G string sounds pretty sad too. All right, so G string, your furthest string over, right? Fourth string, Same process, bottom peg, left side. Let's start tuning it up. It didn't take much of a movement at all to get pretty close. Okay, that is not in tune, but we've gotten it closer now, okay? Let's do a retune. Let's go back in the same order, starting with the A string and get it right on. So here's A, little flat, so I'm gonna use my little tuner. D string. All right, and E. For a tiny violin, that's about as accurate as I'm going to get it. For the larger violins, the resonance is a little bit better. You'll be able to be much more precise with getting your strings in tune. Now, I'm going to do that real quick check-in on my bridge. Make sure that my bridge is still sitting upright and is parallel with the bottom of the fingerboard. This is looking pretty good. This is ready to play. It's time to talk about this thing. If you are using a shoulder rest, it's important that you put it on correctly, otherwise it's just going to get in your way. On my style shoulder rest, the Kuhn rest, these feet can twist in to shorten or heighten it, which is great. So that means I can change the height of either of these sides as, best fits my body. But the hard plastic ones have a shape to them, typically like this. This side, the one that has the shorter side, okay, is going to go up, closest to the K, is going to go on the top of the shoulder because the shoulder rest is designed to follow the curvature of the shoulder down across your collarbone here. Keeping that in mind, I'm going to want that part on my shoulder underneath my chin rest. So holding my violin upside down, I'm going to put my Kuhn rest here, slide this side down. This is held on by friction. These things sometimes will fall off. Sorry. When I have mine on the way I prefer, it smiles at me. Now that I have my shoulder rest on the way that I want it, we're going to work on putting our violin up on our shoulder. I'm going to take my left hand and put it on top of my violin like this. So I've got a good hold. Okay, make sure you've got a good grip. It's nice and tight. Okay. Now that I've got my left hand on the top, thumbs across the back, I'm going to take it over to the left side of my body. All right. Turn your violin upside down by spinning toward the front of your body. So now that you are palm up, don't go back behind you, right? You're not going to be able to do much with that. Make sure you spin this way. Bring your violin up, stick it on your head. All right. Slowly come down and let it settle on your shoulder. Okay? So this is before I've even put my chin down, right? Notice I've got a gap between my body and my arm. My elbow is bent. And this little tiny end button here is pointing more or less toward the nape of my neck. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my head and try to situate my jaw on the chin rest. Everybody's chin rest is shaped slightly different. Some of them go over the tailpiece like mine, some of them do not. They can be slightly adjusted if it's really in your way, but the idea is that the violin is now pinned between your collarbone and your jawbone, and that you can hold the violin on your shoulder without your hands, without pushing your shoulder up either, simply by the weight of your head. I'm really working hard at trying to get comfortable with this being balanced here without me squeezing too hard. If you are doing this without a shoulder rest, the process is still going to be the same, right? You're going to bring this over and bring it down, right? Just like we did before, just making sure that the violin is really firmly sitting between this collarbone and the jawbone. If you're not using a shoulder rest, you may notice the violin will try to slip forward like this. This hand is going to need to be over here, and what I'm going to call for now the stop sign position to keep it from sliding down. This is one of my particular reasons why I don't like not having a shoulder rest. I find it's a little bit more stress-inducing for me. I want to squeeze to try to keep it from sliding ahead of me. But I'm not going to force you or tell you that you have to play with the shoulder rest. Things you want to avoid are bringing it straight in front of you. So let's take a look at why this is a problem. This might be great so you can see your fingers and everything, but it's going to make it very hard when you get to the lower strings to twist your arm this way. It's going to make it even harder if you ever want to play higher up on the violin in position. But the thing that I dislike about this position the most is that if I remove my violin, look where my arm is. It's pinned to the front of my body, and I'm losing the movement inside my shoulder and my elbow. This is all I can do. That's not going to be very helpful for quick playing, relaxed playing, or keeping my shoulder, from hurting. So I want to make sure I have this free swing, so that when we start playing on lower strings or up in position, you'll be able to do that. Remember, I know you're only a beginner, and there's going to be very little that you can do, but I don't want you to be limited by the choices you make right now. This is the time to take your time and be focused. If you take your time and you really focus on this technique, there's not going to be a whole lot that can stop you. Let's put the violin down and move on to the bow hold. The bow hold is by far the most difficult thing for beginners to grasp. We're going to be doing things with these fingers that you've likely never done with your hands before. Take your time. Don't push yourself to go too fast, and pay attention to some of these details. I promise you, a strong bow hold is worth your time. The smaller bows in particular can sometimes be awkwardly made. This one has a frog that just doesn't want to settle in properly. It's unfortunate with the student violins. The general rule of thumb is that the middle of the bow here is about a pencil's width of distance between the bow hairs and the bow stick. I may have forgotten to mention that you do that by tightening this clockwise. Your bow should always have a curvature in it that curves toward the bow hairs. If you over tighten your bow, which I'm going to risk doing with this bow, to where it's super straight like this, there are a bunch of things that can happen. With this bow, it's starting to pull at the frog here, which is what this piece is called, and pull it away from the stick. It can also pull the bow hairs out. These are held in by a little tiny wood wedge, and they can pull out. It can snap the stick if you have a wood bow, or it can pull the wedge out of the top here. So over tightening your bow is only going to break it, and over time, warp it, like this poor little guy's been warped. Many of you will have a cake of rosin that looks very similar to this. It might be a little bit bigger, it might be lighter in color, but essentially this is what the rosin should look like. It could be round. The rosin, if it's brand new, may be super shiny right here. It makes it difficult to get some of it on the bow hairs. And if that's the case, you can take a small metal object and scrape the surface, like a paper clip or something, just to get it started. You do not have to do this every time. This just might help the initial rosining go a little faster. So then what you're going to do is you're going to spread the rosin here on the bow hairs. On a brand new bow, you might have to do this for a minute or two. All right, to make this a little easier for you to see what's going to be going on with my hand, I've put a couple of red spots with an expo marker on my fingers. The bow always goes in the right hand. Even if you're a left-hander, the bow always goes in the right hand. I promise you, your left hand will have plenty to do if you're a left-hander. This instrument is a little bit different than a lot of others. It requires both hands to be rather skilled. I like using a chopstick or a pencil as the beginning way of learning how to hold a bow, just so that you can clearly see what I'm doing with my hand before I put it on the bow. What I'm going to want in my bow hold is my thumb and my middle finger to be kind of across from each other. Okay, I'm going to make this little bow bunny right now. There's my bunny with buck teeth and ears, okay? But the important parts of my hand shape right now is that my thumb is bent, I have this nice kind of oval or almond shape going on in my hand, and all of my joints are round and bent for my center fingers, okay? So with your chopstick now, the hand is going to be slightly at an angle on the bow, which is why you see that I have these different joints highlighted, right? So I'm going to take this chopstick and I'm going to lay it in my hand at an angle with my pinky touching the top of the stick, and on my index finger, my second joint is on the stick. On my middle finger, somewhere around my second joint. Ring finger, the first joint, I'm counting from the top of the finger here. And then the tip here of the pinky. Okay, so I've got this nice angle going on here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and bring my thumb to that center finger like we did when we didn't have the stick in our hand. Making sure I keep that nice almond shape, right? Bring this other finger around a little bit. So you got a little bit of your bunny going on. Bunny might have one tooth longer than the other. That's fine. Everyone's hand shape is a little different, okay? Then I'm going to take my index finger and wrap it around. I'm leaving my pinky on the top. Okay, so let me do that again. I have an angle going here, right? middle fingers closer together, gaps between the outer fingers. Pinky on the top, okay? Thumb's gonna come around and try to meet this middle finger. It can be right in between them a little bit too, depending on the size of your hand and the length of your thumb. You might find that putting your thumb closer to this finger is more comfortable, and some might find it more comfortable here. But the idea is that you want to keep this thumb bent and keep that almond shape in your hand the best that you can. Okay? Wrapping this finger around so we're leaning on this joint and pinky on top. Okay? When I flip my hand over, I'm going to have an angle to my hand. I'm going to be pronating or leaning toward my index finger just a little bit. Try to avoid this very square hand. That's going to be very difficult on your pinky. It'll cause your first finger to either venture this way or your pinky to lean the wrong way, right? We would rather have it leaning much more toward this index finger. But we're going to also avoid this bow hold where the fingers are all grouped together. I know that this was used by some famous players years ago, but many professionals today agree that this particular bow hold is more successful over the long term and less stress inducing. This piece is called the frog, and this part inside of the frog is called the throat. We do not want our finger in this hole. That is very uncomfortable and presses on the nail. Where we want it is in this spot between the end of the frog here and where the wrapping starts. Now, some of you might not have the fancy silver winding and leather here. This might be one big plastic piece, but we do want to be here in this space. We're going to bring the bow over this way. We're going to see if we can get our pinky kind of over on the top and get the bow at an angle, okay? I'm going to roll the bow up this way. As a side note, some of you may have noticed some dirt on my bow. My bow is in need of being rehaired. That is just some hand oil from touching the bow. Good lesson on why you shouldn't touch the bow hairs. Okay, so I'm going to take the bow, roll it this way. So now it's sitting in my hand, kind of like the stick was. And then I'm going to take my thumb and move it to that little place that I showed you, okay? So that it's across the street from that finger. Wrap your finger around, pinky should be on top. So when I flip my hand over, it's going to have that same shape that it did when I was holding the stick. All right, this crazy bow hold, right? With our right hand. We're trying to get our bunny to hold on to the bow. I'm going to hold the bow with my left hand, frog facing right, and I'm going to go after that same hold before. Remember, we have that middle finger seated here. The thumb is going here. It's not in the throat. It's not way over here. It's just kind of wedged up against this little corner here. If you find that corner uncomfortable, there are bow grips that you can add to the bow that'll help, help your hand feel a little more comfortable until you build up the calluses to where this doesn't bother you anymore. But I'm keeping that thumb bent, right? And I'm bringing that center finger around on the second joint to meet. I want my finger to hang over. But let's make sure we keep that thumb bent. That is really important. Not bent this way, but bent with the joint pointing out. So this finger is going to lay on that other red spot over here. For some people, that means the ring finger is going to be covering that little dot on the frog or thereabout. Pinky, this is the next really important part, is that the pinky is spaced away from the fingers and is perched on top of the bow. You don't need to press in. You don't need to squeeze super hard. The shape is important because these fingers are going to be what helps you toggle weight and helps you with movement in the bow, okay? Index fingers wrapped around. So when my hand is properly placed on the bow, it should be like this. Okay, so what if you have arthritis or you have a really, really young player with tiny hands? We actually have a beginner form of this bow hold. In the PDF on my website that is available for you to download for free, there are photographs of both of these bow holds to help you master this hold. The beginner bow hold, instead of putting the thumb here in this little slot, we put it on this silver piece underneath the bow frog this way. For small hands that have, again, disproportionate fingers to the palm and weaker fingers, this helps you to build strength. Whatever your reason is, if you find this bow grip a little easier right now, you are more than welcome to begin with the beginner's bow hold, the thumb on the bottom. Just remember two very important things. One, maintain your shape with your bent thumb and bent pinky on top. We got to keep this even if your thumb is down here on the bottom. Don't let the thumb come around. Don't let it flatten, okay? And the second thing is, after you've completed this first year of playing and you feel like you've built some strength in your in your thumb, you should move your thumb to the stick and go after the professional bow grip. For children under the age of 7, this timeline might be extended a little bit. So this is our bow hold. This is what you're going to be spending most of your time on this week, is trying to master this bow hold. It's going to slip. It's going to fall. It's going to do all kinds of things that you don't want it to do. But once you start getting comfortable with this bow grip, you'll be able to get a magnificent tone, and nothing will be able to stop you from growing into doing things like playing really fast, switching strings, or being able to pick up the bow repetitively, all things that you might need in the future to play the violin. All right, so when you feel like you got that mastered, we're going to move on to the last and final step of playing on the A string. For this part, you're going to need your violin and your bow. Let's have them both ready and together. Okay. You may play your violin seated or standing. I'm going to show you the position seated right now, and then I'll show it to you again standing so that you can get all of that just right. All right, here we go. So we have our violin. Remember, left hand, left side of the body. We're going to take the violin out, bring it up. If you want to, you can sit it on your head just to make sure that your shoulders are nice and balanced, your head is nice and straight. Bring this down, get it settled in there. Okay? For right now, we need to keep the fingers from touching the string so it doesn't make a squeaky noise, right? We got our bow hold shape. If you hold your bow straight up, this is actually really difficult to do until your pinky gets strong, okay? So bow straight up in the air, get your fingers adjusted the best that you can. So we're going to place the bow with my arm at a right angle onto the A string, okay? I'm going to try to get it as straight as I can at first. We'll talk about that as a side note later about the bow being a little bit crooked versus, but for now, please trust me. Keep your bow nice and straight. I've got the bow down between the bridge and the end of the fingerboard, right in the middle here, kind of over these holes here, okay? You're not going to be able to see that from this perspective, so you can use a mirror or a camera to help you get set up at first. What we want to learn to do is feel it with your bow arm. But for now, let's see if we can make a little bit of noise, okay? So now with my violin here, I'm going to open and close my arm from the elbow. While you're doing this, it might start to do things like this and move all over the place. This is your fingers trying to learn how to respond to the bow movement, okay? Just do me a favor. Don't push down on your bow. What makes the sound is the side-to-side motion. The string vibrates by moving side to side. You see my string moving that way? So I need the bow to go across the violin in order to get sound out of it. So don't push down. If you're pushing too hard, you're going to get that sound. We want to just relax and try to move side to side. You can play in any string. Any string you want. Move back and forth and try to get comfortable with opening and closing your arm. Now, at the beginning, you're going to find that playing in the center part of the bow is easier than playing toward your hand or toward the tip. That's okay. Let's master the middle part before we have to start doing any hand shape changes, okay? So let's look at it from this angle. Okay, just a little bit of practice trying to stay on one string and not hitting the other. If you prefer to stand while you're playing, which I personally do because I feel it keeps my posture a lot better, what you're going to want to do is make sure that your legs are not locked together and your knees aren't locked straight up, because that's not very good for blood flow and will cause you to faint. So what we're going to do is loosen your body, okay? Stand with your legs about your hips width apart, and it does actually help to move your left foot slightly out so that you're making an L shape with your feet, so that the left side of the body, the foot that's under the violin, is pointed in the same direction as the violin. Many people find that very helpful. You can toggle back and forth. You have a nice strong stance and your knees can stay slightly bent, okay? That's really the only difference for a standing violinist, is making sure that you don't lock up, but you relax and you have your feet relaxed and your violin off the side of your body here. Okay? So standing up to play, great thing to do. It'll keep you from drooping down like this, as this is not very helpful for a violinist. Okay? Violin up, free elbows. Hand in that position we were talking about, and you can practice your open A string. So here is your homework. 1, get comfortable with this violin. 2, try to get comfortable with this bow hold. It's going to take a little while. It might even take you a few weeks before you really have it down, but check in on it all the time. Okay? Keep that pinky on top. Keep your thumb bent. Third thing you're going to do is you're going to work on playing on whatever string that you want to, trying to get the most beautiful tone that you can. All 4 strings are fine, but when you're playing, you only want to hear one string play at a time. Everybody's violin case is a little bit different, but you should have some version of this, where you have a place to put your violin with a strap to hold it still. Some cases have a spot for the shoulder rest and even a spot for the rosin. Some cases have a little compartment here at the top, and you have places to put the bow. Okay, so I'll show you the 2 different style of cases by packing both the big violin and the small violin for you today. So putting my violin away, the first thing I usually put away is my bow. I make sure that I loosen my bow hairs, right? Turning my key here counterclockwise, loosening the bow hairs a little bit. The tip usually goes into this compartment, and the frog is the part that is strapped in or held down. In this case, it's with a Velcro strap. My shoulder rest actually has a little place that it can go over here. My shoulder rest has folding feet as well. Yours might not, but that's okay. So go ahead and get your shoulder rest into its little spot. So then the violin is going to go here in this compartment and strap down by the strap. Some cases have a little cover that goes over the top. In my case, I happen to have a bag that my violin goes into to help protect it. I am always going to make sure that I belt this closed and then latch whatever latches that you have on the outside of your case. Now I'm going to pack the smaller violin. This is a very, very common type of case where you have the pocket here for your rosin and you have the space for the violin and these style things to lock in the bow. So let's do the same thing we did with the other bow. We're going to loosen here just so that it helps keep the bow a little longer. It does not matter if you use the top or the bottom one. Okay, you're going to put the bow in with the little lock this way, and then you're going to spin it so that it traps the bow in here. Take my shoulder rest off the little violin, put it in here. This case does not have a strap and does not have a place for the shoulder rest. Some people like to try and figure out ways to put their shoulder rest in here. But remember, we don't want anything pressing on these pegs or the tops of the strings because it's going to make it go out of tune. And we certainly don't want anything here on the fragile bridge. So in this case, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the little feet and stick it safely in a bag someplace so I don't lose it. I'm going to close our case up. Especially since this case does not have a strap for the violin, I'm going to want to make sure that I close and lock my case well before I put it away. In this episode, we covered a lot of new material and it can seem overwhelming. Just because I'm posting a video each week doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be ready to move on to that next thing that week. You could spend 1 or even 2 weeks on the things that we covered today until you feel really good about it, okay? Take your time. There is no need to rush. The videos will be there when you're ready to go to them. That's the greatest thing about this particular format. There's no time limit. They're going to be online and free forever. This thing that you're working on, holding this bow, is going to be the key to making your violin sound really good. You can have the most in-tune fingers in the world. You can read every note, know the theory inside out. Without a nice bow grip, the sound is just not going to be what you want it to be. So take your time. Work through each of these steps. Review this video as many times as you need to. Next week, we're going to cover 2 really important things. We're going to learn how to play a basic rhythm, and we're going to learn how to put our first finger down. And in order to be able to put your first finger down in tune, you're either going to need to mark your violin where the fingers are going to go with some special finger tapes, or you can buy a preset tape. We're going to cover all of that in the next episode. I can't wait. Have a great time this week.